He found an alien woman bathing behind his cabin. Her eyes changed his fate forever. The forest behind Mark Harlan's cabin was the only place that felt quiet. He had picked this spot on Epsilon 9 for that reason alone. A green moon, warm air, tall trees that made a roof of leaves. Strange birds called in short notes. Small six-legged things ran through the ferns. The sun here was softer, like afternoon on Earth, even in the morning. Mark walked the narrow path with 2 empty water buckets. His shirt stuck to his back. His hair, cut to his jaw, moved in the breeze and hid his eyes for a second. People once said he looked good. That was before the lines. Before the nights when he did not sleep. Before the expedition. 3 years had passed, but the memory stayed sharp. He had been cleared of fault. Equipment failure, they wrote. He knew better. He had missed something. His team had paid for it. The sound of the creek grew louder. Soft water over stone. He knelt to fill the first bucket. Cold touched his fingers. He felt calm for a breath. Then he froze. Downstream, half hidden by tall fronds, a figure stood in the water. Waist deep. Not human. Female, yes, but not like any he had seen. Skin the color of clear sky. It seemed to glow where sunlight broke through the leaves. Long silver hair spread on the surface like threads of light. A thin, glassy cloth clung to her form. It did not hide much. Water rolled down and sparkled. He knew he should look away. He did not. He could not. She turned and saw him. Her eyes were large and almond-shaped, a deep violet that shifted like northern lights. They watched him with care, not fear. The moment stretched. "Who are you?" he said. His voice sounded small. She crossed her arms by instinct, then let them drop a little. Her face changed from surprise to study. "I am Ilara," she said. The words were careful but clear. Musical. "I did not know humans live in this valley." "Just me," Mark said, standing slow. 3 years now. "Mark Harlan. You are alone here, Mark Harlan?" she asked. He nodded. He felt how strange this must be for her. "I should go," he said. "I did not plan to intrude." "Wait," Ilara said. One word, but it carried weight. "I am searching. Perhaps you can help." "What are you looking for?" he asked. She moved closer to the bank. The water fell from her as she stepped. Up close, Mark saw patterns on her shoulders and arms. Faint lines like living tattoos flowed under her skin. "An old thing," she said.
"Very old."
"Very strong. It sleeps in ruins not far from here." The word hit him like ice. Ruins. The ridge. The collapse. He tasted dust again. "Beyond the ridge?" he asked. Her eyes widened. "You know them." "I know them," he said, jaw tight. "If you want what I think, leave this moon. That place has taken enough." "You have seen it," she said, not as a question. "My team," he said. "They died there." Ilara's face softened. "I am sorry for your loss," she said. "But many worlds are at risk. Others hunt the relic for war. I seek it to heal." She looked over her shoulder, the forest reflected in her eyes. "If they find it first, many will suffer." Mark should have said no. He should have picked up his buckets and walked away. He heard himself ask, "What would you do with it?" "To mend what is broken," she said simply. Something in her voice cut through the fog of his grief. Hope, maybe, or truth. For the first time in 3 years, he felt a pull forward, not down. "Tell me more," he said. They walked to the cabin. She left a thin trail of water drops on the dirt and leaves. The one-room house looked small against the trees. Wood. A porch. A stone hearth. Shelves of real books. He offered a shirt and pants and turned his eyes away while she changed behind a screen. "He made tea from local herbs, Ilara," he said when they sat. Steam rose between them. "You said heal." "Heal who?" "My people," she said. "We fade, generation by generation. The relic holds knowledge from the first makers. With it we may restore our line. And the ones hunting it?" "The Vor," she said, and the music in her voice went cold. "They claim the first maker's throne. They would use it to rule." Mark stared into his cup. "We found a chamber there," he said. "Marks like yours on the walls." Then the floor failed. "Only I came out," he met her eyes. "You think it was not an accident?" "I think the Vor remove anyone who gets near the truth," she said. "You lived. That is why I asked you." He stood and went to a locked chest. His fingers paused over the pad, then he opened it and unwrapped a small shard. Iridescent, etched in flowing lines like those on her skin. Ilara gasped and stood so fast the chair tipped. A piece, she whispered. May I? He nodded. She touched it. The lines woke with a soft glow that answered her pulse. It knows me, she said, wonder bright in her face. This will guide us. A distant boom rolled through the trees. Birds burst from the canopy. Smoke rose beyond the ridge in a thin pillar. They're here, Alara said, voice low. Mark felt the old fear rise and then bend into resolve. He looked at the shard in her hands. He looked at the smoke. He looked at the door. Then we move now, he said. I know these woods better than they ever will. Outside, the leaves whispered like a warning. The creek kept talking to itself as if nothing had changed, but everything had. The forest no longer felt peaceful. It listened. Mark moved fast but quiet, leading Alara through the thick ferns behind his cabin. He carried a small pack, rations, first aid, an old pistol from his expedition days. The alien woman followed close, her steps light even on fallen branches. Her silver hair caught the dim sunlight, a ghostly shimmer in the green shadows. They will search this area soon, she said, her voice soft but urgent. The Vor do not give second chances. Mark glanced back. Then we give them none either. He had spent 3 years running from his past. Now, without thinking, he was running toward it again. The path narrowed into a tunnel of hanging vines. Every sound seemed louder, the creak of boots, the hum of strange insects, the low pulse of distant engines above the trees. How many are they? He asked. A strike team, maybe 24, Alara replied. Scouts with sensors. Hunters who never tire. Mark smirked bitterly. Guess they've never hunted me before. They reached an old ridge trail that overlooked the valley. Smoke drifted from the ruins, black against the pale sky. Through the trees, Mark spotted faint movement, metal shapes, low skimmers hovering, scanning beams slicing the air. The Vor were methodical, searching, closing in. He crouched and motioned for her to stay low. They'll sweep in lines, he said. We move perpendicular, stay in their blind zone. Alara nodded, but her gaze stayed fixed on the smoke. That place, she whispered, is older than your world. My ancestors built it when stars were young. Mark looked at her, the light from the burning ruins reflected in her violet eyes. And they buried something dangerous enough to get them all killed. Or precious enough to die for, she said quietly. They moved again, deeper into the woods. Strange bioluminescent plants glowed faintly under the canopy, painting their path in green-blue light. The air thickened with humidity, and the forest seemed to close around them. Why here? Mark asked as they crossed a narrow stream. Out of every world, why hide your relic on this one? Alara stepped carefully on the wet stones. Because humans are unpredictable. The ancients believed no single race should hold all power, so they left fragments across the galaxy. Places only those with courage and curiosity could reach. Mark snorted. So they hid it where some fool like me would stumble onto it. Perhaps not a fool, she said softly. They found shelter under the twisted roots of a fallen tree, its hollow forming a small cave. Mark checked his weapon, cleaning dust from the barrel. Alara knelt beside him, her skin faintly glowing in the dark. You have seen war, she said, studying his movements. Too much of it, Mark answered, but never like this. The Vor don't fight for survival, she said. They fight to erase, he looked at her then. In the faint light, the patterns on her skin pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat in blue. Then we can't let them find what's hidden. A faint whine filled the air. Both froze. Above the canopy, a dark craft drifted past, smooth, silent, deadly. A thin red beam swept the forest floor. Mark grabbed Alara and pulled her close beneath the root arch, his hand over her mouth. Her pulse raced against his palm. The beam moved, lingered, then slid away. The hum faded. Silence returned, broken only by their breathing. When he let go, she whispered, You risked yourself for me. He shrugged. Wouldn't be the first bad decision today. But her look lingered, longer than it should have. For a second, they forgot the danger. Then another sound came, boots distant but many. The Vor patrols were closing in. Mark rose. We can't stay here. There's a river west of here, she said quickly. Its mineral scatter sensors. He nodded, motioning for her to follow. Good. That's where we'll vanish. As they ran through the glowing forest, branches whipped at their faces. The air buzzed with energy. The Vor had begun a full sweep. Ahead, through the trees, Mark heard rushing water. Relief flickered. They broke through the brush and stopped at the edge of a fast river. The current glowed faintly from minerals lighting the mist. It was beautiful and deep, no bridges, he said. We'll have to swim. Elara hesitated, eyes on the swirling light. Once we cross, they will lose us, but the current is strong. I've had worse. Mark tightened the straps of his pack. Stay close. Hold my arm. She placed her hand on his wrist, cool skin, firm grip. You trust easily for someone who's lost so much. He looked at her, water roaring beside them. Maybe I stopped trusting myself. They stepped in together, the cold shock of alien water taking their breath. The current grabbed them, pulling fast. Mark kicked hard, keeping her close. Above them, a searchlight cut through the mist. Too late. The beam swept the surface, but the two figures were already gone, swallowed by the river's glow. When they finally crawled onto the far bank, dripping and breathless, Mark laughed. A wild sound he hadn't made in years. We made it. Elara looked back at the river glowing like liquid stars. For now, she said. But the hunt has only begun. Somewhere behind them the forest burned and the vor began to spread. But for the first time since the ruins, Mark felt something alive inside him again. Not fear. Purpose. The river had carried them far from the ruins, but not far from danger. The forest beyond was older, stranger. The trees here had silver veins glowing faintly under their bark, and the air shimmered with faint magnetic static that made Mark's hair stand on end. Every step felt like trespassing on something sacred. They stopped under a canopy of giant blue-leafed vines. Mark wrung water from his shirt while Elara stood motionless, eyes half closed as if listening to something he couldn't hear. The patterns on her skin flickered faintly, reacting to the forest itself. What is it? Mark asked, scanning the area with his old field scope. This place remembers, she said quietly. The ancients built conduits under these roots. Echoes of energy still hum below. Mark frowned. You mean it's alive? Not alive, she corrected softly, but aware. He didn't like the sound of that. He turned his attention back to the scope. The signal was messy, but a small red dot blinked on the edge of the screen. Movement to the north. They're still tracking, he muttered. Elara knelt beside him. How long before they reach us? An hour, maybe less, he said. Depends how many drones they send. Then we keep moving. They started through the valley, following a faint trail of glowing moss. The forest floor dipped and rose like rolling waves. Strange fungi pulsed at their feet, releasing soft blue dust that glimmered in the air. After a long silence, Mark said, You talk about your people's fall like it was fate. Didn't anyone fight back? Elara hesitated. Once, long ago, we were explorers, dreamers, not soldiers. The vor came when we were weak, dying from within. The artifact we seek was meant to save us, but they stole its pieces. My order was formed to reclaim them. Your order? Mark asked. The Seekers of Lyra, she said. We are chosen to follow the fragments, even if it costs our lives. He studied her profile, the sharp lines softened by exhaustion and light. And you think that thing in the ruins can still help you? Her eyes flicked toward him. I don't think human. I know. They crossed a narrow ridge where the view opened to endless green valleys below. Alien birds spiraled above a cracked stone spire jutting from the ground. Half-buried ruins. That wasn't here 3 years ago, Mark said, stopping. The planet shifts, she explained. Epsilon 9 has living crust. Old sites rise and fall with time. He crouched, brushing dirt from the surface. Symbols curved across the rock, flowing lines almost identical to those etched into the shard back at the cabin. This is the same script, he murmured. Elara knelt beside him. These words mark a junction. The ancients used these spires to guide energy between their vaults. If one rises, the rest could be waking up, he finished for her. The realization made his skin crawl. If the artifact's power was returning, the vor would sense it too. Suddenly, a faint buzz filled the air. The sound of a small engine, high, mechanical, too steady to be natural. Mark spun around. Through the haze, a spherical drone emerged, hovering at head height. Its red lens scanned the clearing. Down, he hissed, dragging Elara behind the spire. The drone swept its beam across the area, the light passing inches from them. Mark reached for his pulse pistol, then stopped. His ammo was low and one shot would reveal their position. Elara's hand brushed his arm. Let me. She closed her eyes and whispered something under her breath. The patterns on her skin pulsed in sync with the spire's faint glow. A vibration filled the air, then the drone's lens flickered and died. The machine dropped like a stone into the moss. Mark blinked. You did that? A resonance pulse, she said calmly. The ancients taught us to harmonize with certain frequencies. Machines built with their energy respond to it. He stared at her. Remind me never to make you angry. She smiled faintly. You would not survive it. They moved on quickly, but the silence between them carried new weight. She had just disabled technology older than human civilization with a whisper. Whatever Alara truly was, she wasn't just a wanderer. After another hour, they reached a small clearing near the base of a hill. Bioluminescent vines hung like curtains, and a shallow cave mouth yawned beyond. Mark stopped and crouched. We'll rest here, he said. You need it, Alara looked reluctant but nodded. Inside, the cave walls shimmered faintly, reflecting the strange light from outside. Mark set down his pack, unrolled a thermal blanket, and lit a low blue flame from his portable burner. Tell me something, he said after a long pause. Back there, when you touched that shard, it reacted to you. Why? She looked into the small fire. Because I carry part of its code within me, he frowned. What do you mean, part of it? Her gaze lifted, calm but haunted. Each seeker is born through genetic binding. Our DNA holds fragments of the ancient key. Alone it means nothing. Together it awakens the seed. And you're the last of them, he said quietly. Yes. The fire crackled between them. Outside, thunder rumbled far away, low, steady, like the growl of something waking beneath the soil. Mark looked toward the forest. They're coming, he said. I can feel it. Alara rose and placed a hand on the cave wall. The patterns on her skin flared brighter. Then we stop running, she said softly. This world remembers my people. Let it remember their strength too. Mark watched her as the faint light spread from her hand across the stone, forming lines that pulsed like veins under the earth. Whatever she was awakening, it was no longer just history. It was power, and in that moment Mark understood something terrifying and beautiful. The woman he had met in a quiet creek wasn't just trying to save her people. She might also be the key to reshaping every world in the galaxy. The storm came without warning. One moment the forest outside was humming with its usual alien life. The next, everything went silent. Even the glowing insects vanished into cracks. The air grew heavy, charged with static. Mark could feel the pressure behind his eyes, like the world itself was holding its breath. Inside the cave, faint lines of light began to snake across the walls, slow at first, then spreading faster, pulsing in rhythm with Alara's heartbeat. She stood near the center, eyes closed, one palm pressed flat against the stone. Alara, Mark said quietly, his hand tightening around his weapon. What are you doing? She didn't answer at first. Her silver hair lifted slightly as if caught in an invisible current. The glow beneath her skin intensified until the air shimmered around her form. Finally she spoke, her voice distant, layered, almost echoing. I'm opening what was closed. The cave trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. The lines of light converged toward a single point on the floor, forming a perfect circle. It began to sink, stone folding in on itself like melting metal until a staircase appeared, spiraling down into a shaft of blue light. Mark stared, speechless. You had that under the floor this whole time? Not me, she said, lowering her hand. The ancients did. I only reminded it that we're still here. He stepped closer to the glowing stairs, peering into the dark below. And what exactly are we walking into? The heart of the valley, she said. A memory vault. It will show us what happened here, and what the Vor are trying to find. Mark hesitated. And it won't eat us alive? Alara smiled faintly. Only if it decides we are unworthy. Comforting. He checked his pistol and motioned her ahead. They descended together, the light pulsing brighter with every step. The deeper they went, the quieter it became, until their own breathing seemed too loud. When they reached the bottom, the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. It wasn't stone anymore, it was something smoother, like glass fused with metal. Patterns rippled beneath the surface as if alive. At the center floated a crystal column the size of a tree, humming softly. Pale blue light radiated from within it, illuminating floating fragments of holographic symbols. Alara stepped forward. This is a memory core, she said. Each of these holds a record of my people's final years. She touched one of the symbols. Instantly the air rippled, and the cavern filled with light. Images flickered like ghosts, tall blue-skinned beings walking under twin suns. building great towers that curved like living vines. Then came the war, ships falling from the sky, cities burning in golden fire, a monstrous fleet blotting out the stars. Mark swallowed. That's them. The Vor Ilara nodded. Her voice was quiet, trembling. Yes, and those who survived scattered across worlds, hiding the pieces of the seed so that no empire could claim it. The vision changed again, a circle of Lyrian elders standing before the same crystal they now faced. Their leader spoke words that vibrated through Mark's chest. The seed must sleep until the worthy awaken it. The union of two kinds, different yet one in purpose. The light faded. Silence returned. Mark frowned. Two kinds? What does that mean? Ilara turned to him, her eyes glowing faintly. It means the seed can't be activated by my people alone. He stared at her. You're saying it needs a human? Something human, she corrected softly. A mind that adapts, that survives. The ancients saw that trait as sacred. And now, she looked at him, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. Now maybe they were waiting for someone like you. Mark shook his head. I'm no chosen anything. I'm just the last man standing after a failure. You lived, she said simply. And sometimes that's all destiny needs. Before he could reply, a faint metallic thud echoed from above. Then another, heavy, rhythmic. Mark's instincts kicked in. They found the entrance. Ilara turned toward the staircase, her expression hardening. The Vor are fast. Too fast, he muttered. They must have tracked the energy spike when you opened this place. From the ceiling above, faint red beams cut through the light. Scanners. Mark grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a pillar. We've got maybe a minute before they're on us. Ilara looked at the memory core, its light still pulsing softly. If we leave it now, they'll take it. Then we make sure they don't. He aimed his pistol toward the tunnel just as shadows began to move, black-armored shapes descending the glowing stairs. The Vor. They moved in formation, their armor sleek and reflective, red visors burning through the dark. The lead soldier raised a scanner, sweeping the room. 2 life signatures detected, it said in a hollow voice. Mark whispered, Guess the welcome party's here. Ilara pressed her palm to the floor again. The glowing lines flared, racing up the walls and wrapping the memory core in a protective lattice of light. It will hold for a short time, she said. But we can't stay here. Mark fired a burst toward the stairs. The pulse blast hit the first soldier square in the chest, throwing him back into his comrades. Sparks erupted, the air filled with the sharp tang of ion discharge. Ilara reached for him. There's another way, a lower passage. He nodded, covering her as she traced a glowing symbol on the wall. A section of it folded inward, revealing a narrow tunnel descending into darkness. They slipped inside just as another volley of red blasts scorched the chamber behind them. The tunnel sealed shut. For a few seconds, all they could hear was their own breath and the echo of battle fading above. Then Ilara whispered, We're close now. The seed's true chamber lies beneath this vault. Mark adjusted his grip on the pistol, the adrenaline still pounding in his veins. Good, he said grimly. Because if those bastards want it, they'll have to go through both of us. And as the two of them descended deeper into the unknown glow, Mark realized that whatever waited below, it wasn't just ancient technology. It was judgment. The tunnel narrowed until Mark had to crouch, his hands brushing smooth walls that seemed to hum faintly under his palms. The glow that had guided them flickered, shifting from blue to a deeper shade of indigo. The air felt charged, alive, like standing inside the heart of a storm that hadn't yet broken. How much farther? He asked, his voice low but steady. Close, Ilara replied, her tone a mix of awe and tension. We're walking through the throat of the seed's resonance field. Every step brings us nearer to its core. Mark gave a dry laugh. Feels like walking into a power plant that's dreaming. The tunnel opened suddenly into a massive circular chamber. The floor was glassy and reflective, covered in concentric rings of glowing script. In the center floated a sphere the size of a human head, suspended by invisible energy. It pulsed with a heartbeat rhythm, soft, slow, ancient. Ilara stepped forward first, eyes wide. The heart of the seed, she whispered. It's still awake. Mark followed, scanning the perimeter. And if it's awake, it means the Vor can sense it too. Before she could answer, the sphere's glow flared, casting moving shadows across the walls. The rings on the floor shifted, spinning like gears in a giant clock. The sound it made wasn't mechanical. It was melodic, like 1,000 voices singing in tones too low for human ears. Alara dropped to one knee, placing both hands on the floor. The script responded instantly, its light climbing her arms in delicate threads. "It's testing us," she said. "It's deciding if we're the ones the ancients spoke of." Mark glanced around. "And what happens if it decides we're not?" She met his eyes briefly. "Then we cease to exist." "Fantastic," he muttered but didn't move. The energy in the room began to rise. A soft vibration at first, then a tremor that grew into a hum Mark could feel in his bones. The sphere expanded slightly, the air around it rippling like heat waves. Alara closed her eyes and began speaking in her native tongue, melodic words that vibrated through the air. As she did, the patterns on her skin began to mirror the ones under her hands. Mark took a slow step forward. "What can I do?" "Stay near me," she said, her voice trembling from the effort. "The seed reacts to both our life signatures. It needs balance." "Balance?" She looked at him. "Human adaptability, Lyrian memory, two halves of one design." Before he could reply, a flash of blue light erupted from the sphere, enveloping both of them. For a brief instant, Mark saw everything. Galaxies being born, dying, and reborn again. Entire civilizations rising from dust and returning to it. Endless cycles of creation and loss. He saw Lyrians standing beside humans centuries from now, and others who weren't born yet but somehow carried both their blood. Then it was gone. Mark gasped, falling to one knee. The light faded, leaving him dizzy but alive. His vision swam. And then he realized Alara was glowing even brighter than before. The script along her skin had spread to her neck and shoulders, pulsing like veins of light. "Alara," he said, reaching out. "You okay?" She turned to him, her eyes now shimmering with two-color, violet and gold. "It's linking us," she whispered. "I can feel your thoughts. Your fear, your pain," he blinked. "You can read me." "Not words, my word, feelings," she said. "The seed is joining our energies. This is the test the elders spoke of." Before he could answer, the floor shuddered violently. A deafening boom echoed above them, the sound of explosions. "The Vor," Mark said, his instincts snapping into focus. "They're breaking through." Alara looked toward the ceiling. "If they reach the heart, they'll corrupt it. We must finish the bond before they do." "Bond? You mean this connection thing?" "Yes. Only through it can the seed recognize its true guardians. Once linked, no one else can control it." Mark hesitated. He didn't like the sound of that word, bond. It implied permanence. But the alternative was worse. "Tell me what to do," he said finally. "Place your hand on the sphere." He stepped closer, the light growing almost too bright to look at. He raised his hand, feeling warmth radiating from it, and something deeper, a pulse that matched his heartbeat. When his fingers touched its surface, the sphere expanded again, wrapping both of them in a cocoon of light. Alara's voice echoed through the glow. "Now don't resist it. Easy for you to say," Mark shouted over the hum. He felt a flood of memories, not his own. Images of blue oceans under twin moons, children laughing in a city made of glass, a great hall filled with stars. He felt Alara's fear of extinction, her loneliness, her fierce hope that she'd found salvation. In return, she felt his grief, the screams of his fallen team, the crushing guilt, the endless nights spent wishing he had died with them. Their minds overlapped. For a moment there was no human, no Lyrian, only two souls holding on through shared pain and purpose. Then, as suddenly as it began, the light dimmed. The floor cooled beneath their feet. The sphere floated between them, its color now split, half blue, half gold, beating in perfect time with both their hearts. Alara stumbled but smiled faintly. "It's done," she whispered. "The heart knows us." Mark caught her before she fell. "Good," he said, glancing upward at the shaking ceiling. "Because it sounds like the Vor are about to find us." Above them, muffled voices shouted in a harsh language. Metal hit stone. The stairway was gone, blown open. Mark pulled her to her feet. "You said the seed can protect itself. Can it protect us?" Alara's eyes glowed. "Only if we command it together." "How?" She gripped his hand tightly. "Think it, feel it, want it." Mark took a deep breath and focused on the one thought burning in his mind. "We survive." The sphere pulsed once. then unleashed a shockwave of light that blasted upward through the tunnel like a living storm. The walls rippled. The ground shuddered. Above them, the Vor screamed as the wave struck. And then there was silence. Dust drifted from the ceiling, settling around them like snow. Mark opened his eyes. The heart floated quietly again, dim and calm as if nothing had happened. Alara looked at him, exhaustion and awe in her face. "You did it," she said softly. He exhaled, still gripping her hand. "No," he said, a faint smile forming despite the chaos. "We did it." And in that moment, as the glowing patterns along their skin began to match perfectly, Mark realized that whatever had started as survival had become something far greater, something the universe itself seemed to recognize. The blast had left the air thick with heat and dust. Mark's ears rang, and for a few moments all he could hear was the slow echo of his heartbeat. When the haze cleared, the upper tunnels were gone, sealed by collapsed stone. The way back was lost. "Alara, you all right?" he called, coughing through the dust. Her silhouette glowed faintly through the smoke. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice trembled. "The seed shielded us. The Vor weren't so fortunate." Mark scanned the chamber's upper rim. Black smoke curled where the invaders had stood. But through the fading haze, movement flickered, a figure stepping down the broken staircase with deliberate calm. Not a Vor. Taller, leaner, blue skin, darker than Alara's. Eyes like polished obsidian. "Alara," he said, weapon raised. "Friend of yours?" Her expression froze. "Talon." The name fell like a stone between them. He descended slowly, flanked by 2 armored Vor soldiers. His silver hair was braided in ornate strands, and the markings on his arms pulsed with cold light. "You've made quite the mess, little sister," he said. His voice was calm, almost amused. Alara's tone hardened. "You lost the right to call me that when you sold our order to the Vor." Mark felt tension ripple through her, a rage that burned beneath her calm. "That's your brother?" "My blood," she said, eyes narrowing. "But not my kin." Talon smiled faintly. "Still dramatic, I see. Always the believer in noble causes. Tell me, Alara, how many of our kind died chasing your purity while you hid behind ruins?" "You betrayed us," she snapped. "You gave them our codes and our seekers for your own gain." "And what did it matter?" he asked softly. "Our people were dying anyway. The Vor offered survival." Mark stepped between them. "By killing everyone else?" Talon's black eyes shifted to him. "Ah, the human survivor. I wondered when you'd appear. You have something that doesn't belong to you." Mark's hand twitched near his weapon. "Funny, I was thinking the same about your goons." Talon laughed, a hollow sound. "Bravery suits you. A shame it's wasted." Alara took a step forward, her markings blazing brighter. "Leave now, Talon. The seed has chosen. You can't touch it." "Oh, I can," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You think the ancients' tests matter? The Vor don't need to be chosen. They take what they want." The Vor soldiers behind him raised their rifles. The air hummed with the charge of plasma cores. Mark fired first. The pulse from his pistol struck one soldier square in the visor, dropping him instantly. The second fired back. The blast missed by inches, vaporizing part of the floor. Talon moved faster than either of them expected. A flash of blue light, and Mark's pistol flew from his hand, yanked by an unseen force. "Still playing with human toys?" Talon said. "How quaint." Alara raised both hands. The light in the chamber responded. The glowing lines along the floor flared, surging toward her like streams of fire. "You don't understand what you're touching, Talon," she said. "It will destroy you." "Or save me," he countered. His eyes locked on the heart, still floating behind her. "The seed doesn't care who it saves, only who controls it." Mark dove for cover behind a fallen column as another energy blast ripped past. The heat seared his arm, but he ignored it. "He's not bluffing," he shouted. "He wants the seed to rewrite him and to fix whatever's killing your people." "That's not salvation," Alara shouted back. "That's corruption." Talon extended his hand, and the markings along his arm flared like lightning. The seed trembled in the air, drawn toward him. Its light flickered between blue and red as if confused. Alara screamed in her native tongue, channeling pure resonance through her palms. The glow from her body collided with Talon's in a violent storm of color. The sound wasn't a roar. It was music twisted into pain. Mark could barely breathe. The pressure crushed the air from his lungs. "Alara!" he shouted, forcing himself toward her through the storm of light. Talon grinned through the chaos. "You don't belong in this fight, human. You're out of your depth." Mark didn't slow down. "You'd be surprised what drowning men can do." He tackled Talon mid-step, both of them crashing against the energy field. Pain exploded across his chest as the resonance flared. For a second, he thought his heart had stopped. Alara seized the opening. She pressed both palms against the seed, channeling her bond through it. "Mark, with me." He reached out, touching her shoulder. The patterns on his skin ignited, responding to hers. Together, they poured their joined energy into the heart. The sphere blazed white. Talon screamed as the resonance backlash hit him, the force throwing him across the chamber. He hit the far wall with a shattering sound, sliding to the ground in silence. The seed's glow faded to a calm pulse once more. Mark gasped for breath, his vision blurred. "Is it over?" Alara knelt beside him, her hand trembling as she checked his pulse. "For now," she said. "But Talon isn't dead. The seed spared him." Mark coughed. "Why would it do that?" She looked toward her fallen brother, eyes unreadable. "Because his judgment isn't mine to give." Above them, the cavern trembled again, the sound of engines drawing near. The Vor reinforcements were descending. Alara stood, helping Mark to his feet. "They'll be here in minutes." He looked at her, still unsteady. "Then we finish this before they arrive." She nodded. "There's one last chamber below, the true core. Once it awakens, the seed can hide itself, vanish from all sensors." Mark smiled faintly despite the pain. "Lead the way, Blue Lady." Together they moved toward the deeper tunnel as the ceiling above cracked open, red light spilling down like blood. Behind them, Talon stirred weakly, his eyes glowing with something new. Not rage, not pain, but a dark resolve. The bond had rejected him, but it hadn't destroyed him. And somewhere deep inside, the seed still whispered his name. The tunnel descended into silence so deep that even their footsteps seemed afraid to echo. The air grew cooler, denser, tinged with a metallic sweetness that felt almost alive. Faint veins of light ran along the walls like living roots, pulsing slowly in rhythm with Alara's breath, and impossibly with Mark's. When they reached the bottom, the passage opened into a cavern that took his breath away. The ceiling arched high above, glimmering with faint starlight. At the center hovered a colossal sphere, the true seed, vast, radiant, and breathing with the pulse of an ancient heart. It wasn't made of metal or crystal, but something that seemed to shift between matter and energy, solid one moment, fluid the next. The light it gave off was soft but infinite, painting their faces in hues of gold and silver. Mark stepped forward slowly, awe settling over him. "It's alive," he whispered. Alara nodded. "In a way, yes. The ancients called it the sleeper of stars." It waited for harmony, for two voices joined as one. "Then let's wake it," he said. Before they could move, the tunnel behind them shook violently. A deep roar filled the cavern. Out of the collapsing passage stumbled Talon, battered but unbroken, his eyes burning with an unnatural red light. The Vor had fused part of their weapon core into his chest, crude, desperate, but powerful. "I won't be erased," he growled, his voice no longer his own. "If I cannot claim the seed, I will destroy it." Alara stepped between him and the great sphere. "You've already destroyed enough." "You think this thing will save you?" he spat. "You think the ancients meant for us to crawl to humans for help?" Mark lifted his weapon, his jaw set. "They meant for the strong to protect the weak. You chose the wrong side." Talon raised his arm. Light crackled from his palm, searing the air. Mark fired first. The pulse blast struck Talon's shoulder, but the fusion core absorbed it. He roared, firing back with energy wild enough to melt stone. Ilara turned toward the seed, eyes filled with tears and light. "It's time," she whispered. She reached out. Mark understood without words. He took her hand, their palms pressing together. The patterns along their skin flared to life, hers swirling blue and silver, his gold and white. The two sets merged, creating new runes that glowed like sunlight through water. The seed responded. Its surface rippled and brightened, spinning faster until the entire chamber trembled. Light rose from the floor like mist, encircling them. Talon screamed as the glow spread, the energy crawling up his body, rejecting the fusion core within him. "You can't." The light consumed him before he could finish. When it faded, nothing remained but a faint shimmer in the air, the echo of what he had been. The storm of light calmed, leaving only quiet. Ilara swayed, her strength nearly spent. Mark caught her as she stumbled. "Hey," he said softly, brushing dust from her face. "You did it." "No," she whispered weakly, looking up at the seed, which now floated motionless above them. "We did it." A voice, neither male nor female, filled the chamber, resonating in their bones. "Balance achieved. The guardians are chosen. The seed shall awaken and return life where it has faded." The sphere's light dimmed, then fractured into thousands of tiny motes that scattered upward like fireflies, weaving into the walls, the ceiling, and the sky beyond. Mark looked up through the widening fissures above, where dawnlight broke through the dust. For the first time, Epsilon 9's alien sky glowed with two suns instead of one. The seed had awakened the world's second star. Ilara's fingers tightened around his. "Do you feel it?" she asked. He nodded. "It's like the whole planet's breathing again." She smiled faintly. "Then our work is done." But the seed wasn't gone. It had become part of them, its patterns glowing faintly on their skin even as the light above faded. They felt it humming quietly within, connecting their hearts across whatever distance life would give them. Days later, as the ruins crumbled and the Vor fled into the void, new life began to spread across the moon. Glowing rivers, reborn forests, air that tasted new. Mark and Ilara stood on a ridge overlooking it all. "So what happens now?" he asked. Ilara smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. "Now we rebuild. My people will come again. Yours will follow. Together, perhaps we can prove the ancients were right." He looked at her, sunlight dancing across her silver hair. "About what?" "That two hearts, no matter how different, can change the fate of worlds." The wind carried her words across the valley, mingling with the sound of rushing water and the distant hum of new life being born. And for the first time in 3 long years, Mark didn't feel alone. He felt human. He felt whole. And beside him, an alien woman smiled at the dawn, a dawn they had created together,